Hello fellow blenderers, in this video we're going to be creating a Predator style stealth camouflage, cloaking, de-cloaking, whatever kind of effect. Becoming invisible but not just disappearing, make it look more interesting. So I've got this Predator model because we're doing Predator stuff. I'm pretty sure I got this from Open 3D Lab, I can't remember, but it's a pretty nice model. So if you want to go and get that yourself, there you go, it's already rigged and everything. So let's just get straight on with it. It's got a lot of parts, so I'm just going to start off with the body. So I'm going to hide everything except for the body. Okay, so now we have a naked, genitalless predator. I know they're not called predators. I'm not going to try and pronounce what they're called. But anyway, so this works in Eevee and cycles. The only thing is we have to make a slight change for it to work in cycles, but that's no problem. So I'm just going to bring up a shader tab down here. Okay, I'm going to select my predator, and one thing I'm going to say now is that this has lots of materials. So the most difficult thing about this is going to be copying and pasting the setup to other materials. The rest is very easy. Yeah, so here we are starting off on his head. So let's just zoom in here a bit. And so this shader has been created using a group input, a group here, which I'm not going to mess with because I want to make this simple for anyone to be able to do. So I'm going to delete this, and I'm just going to add in a principled BSDF. Pop that in there, plug that into my material output, which I'll leave over here for now because I need to move it anyway. I don't need this light map. I'm just going to tidy things up a little bit. Let's get that like that. Okay, and this is the base color, so that just goes into the base color here. And I do want to have some bump, so I'm going to just duplicate this so things are a little bit tidier and use the UV here. This is not important, but this is just the setup I'm getting to get ready kind of thing. I'm just going to add in a bump node here and set that on like 0.2 on normal. Okay, so this is on Eevee. I'm using Blender 3.1, but this will work on later versions. The only reason I'm using it on 3.1 is because screencast keys is a bit buggy on later versions. But so before I get started on this, I'm just going to add in an HDRI so we can see it in like rendered view. Okay, so I've got this lovely Epping Forest, which is a place in England if you don't know. And yeah, so I'm going to go with that. So I've got my color. I'm just going to pop that up there for now, and I've got my, let's get this all nicely squared up. Yeah, got my bump down there just for the sake of having some bump. So this is super easy. First, let's set it up so it works in Eevee, and then we just make a slight change so it works in cycles. So if you are going to do it in cycles, stick around for this bit. And then also, once I've done that, I'm going to show you a different way of doing stealth, camouflage, whatever, and a few other ideas just to give you some ideas. So I think this looks pretty cool with a Musgrave texture. Okay, so I'm going to pop that in down there. And so don't follow this bit. I'm just going to show you how this is going to work. I'm going to plug in a color ramp. I'm going to drop in a color ramp here, and I'm just going to plug in the height, and then this color ramp is going to go into the alpha. This is just to show you. Don't follow this. Okay, and so what this Musgrave texture is going to do is create this kind of patchy, blobby area here where it's going to be visible and the black area will be invisible. But we're using Eevee, so we need to adjust our options, our settings here. Blend mode set to alpha clip. Okay, that's the first thing. All right, and that's going to go crazy. Let's drag that back a little bit. All right, and so now you see what we're going for here. Yeah, this is going to be becoming visible and invisible. We're not going to do it with the color ramp. I'm just showing you the idea here. But the only problem is that we don't want to see the back face. So just enable back face culling. I don't want to see the back face, but if that's how you want to do it, then fine. I just think it doesn't make sense because stealth camouflage would probably be probably wouldn't show the inside. Yeah, because then you also have to have the skull and whatever. But yeah, so that's the basic principle. So I'm going to take that out of the alpha. I'm going to add in a mix shader, drop that in here, and then add in a transparent BSDF just for now, okay? Because maybe you want your guy completely invisible, but that's not how the Predator works. But first we're just going to do completely invisible while we do the setup. Okay, and I'm going to plug that into the second slot here, and then I'm going to bring up my Musgrave texture up to here, and so this color ramp for now is just going to drive the factor of the mix shader. Okay, so that's what we're doing. Okay, transparent, you know, and becomes invisible when we get it down to like 0.001 or something. But it's going to be much easier if we don't use a color ramp. We're going to use a map range node here. Okay, and plug the Musgrave texture into the value, and now the result is going to go into the factor down here. Okay, so now we're going to use the 2 minimum to control our invisibility. Yeah, and actually I want to switch these around. 1 should be, yeah, I'm going to switch these around because I want 1 to be visible and 0 to be invisible, like that. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to make this more efficient when I'm actually animating. I don't want to be coming into the shader to mess around with this, so that's really easy to do. So I'm just going to add an empty. Yeah, you could also do this with a bone. You could add a bone to your rig, so maybe you think it looks quite cool if he's got an extra bone which controls it. But I'm just going to do an empty, add it here, and I'm going to rename that empty to whatever I can find effective, shader control. Okay, and I want it to stick to my guy, just because then I don't have to worry about finding it. So I'm going to click on my rig, go into pose mode just so I can find the name of that bone, which is spine middle 2, and I'm going to set my cursor to that area, go back into object mode, grab my empty and snap it to the cursor. Okay, easy, yeah. And now I'm just going to scale that down so it doesn't stick out quite so much, but I need it visible, and I'm going to apply the scale, Control A, and apply that scale. So that's my shader control down here. All right, don't need to see that now. I can just see it in the, what's it called? The outliner over here. Right, so I'm going to add a driver to this. So in my 2min, which is controlling my visibility and invisibility, I'm going to add a driver. So right click, add driver, and I've figured this out for myself. If you know a better way to do this, please leave a comment. Yeah, like most Blender users, I'm self-taught, so you know, this is my way of doing it. Set the driver type to maximum value. Okay, the object is going to be my shader control, and the type here, the object type, is going to be average scale. Okay, so we've got our driver here. All right, and now we're going to face our first problem. So if I grab my shader control and start to scale that down, oh, let me bring this up first. I've got the details here, the information for the shader control. So scale is set at 1. And as I start to scale that down, if you notice, it will get to about 0.5, and then it will kick in. Yeah, all right, so there, 0.496, 0.5, yeah, it's quite a sudden change. Yeah, I don't really want that. That's an easy fix. So when you first add in the map range node, it's by default clamp is enabled, so just disable that. Okay, so if I grab my shader control, Alt S, set it back to original scale, and now as I bring that down, the disappearing effect is much more gradual. Okay, so that's basically it, yeah. But now let's just make it look a little bit more cool, a little bit cooler, yeah. So I'm gonna bring my shader down a little bit so I can see what's going on. Go back into my shader, and I want to start to mess with this texture now. Make the disappearing effect look a little bit cooler. So I'm going to bring this back a little bit. I'm going to add in a Voronoi texture. And again, like I said, you know, these textures are what I think looks good. You can mess around and experiment and find what you personally like. And then I'm going to add in a mix RGB. If you're using like 3.6, you know how to find mix RGB. And then mix in my Voronoi. Okay, so now it's just a kind of a matter of Messing with the scale of the Musgrave, I want it quite small on the Musgrave because I want kind of big patches, but I want quite a lot of Voronoi in there, and I want the Voronoi to be quite small. And also I think it looks better if the Voronoi is set to distance to edge. So you get these kind of, whoa. Yeah, let's just get in here and bring the scale right up on that. And I want these kind of like giraffe patches. I think they look quite cool. Probably something like that would look all right. So if I just test that out with my shader, yeah, okay, I think I'm going to make them a little bit smaller, but first let's add in the good old texture coordinate and mapping node, and just tuck that in to both of those. Okay, and yeah, I think I'll get a little bit more Voronoi in there and bring the scale of that up. So I want these little kind of squares and triangles and yeah, something like that. So that's the start there. Got that kind of effect going on. And yeah, like I said, this is all personal preference. Adjust the Musgrave, adjust what you need to make it look how you want it to look. So now what I want to do is, I'm pretty sure in one of the Predator movies, maybe not the first one, but there's like maybe some, but in one of the more recent ones, there's like this kind of glow, orange glow around it as he decloaks and cloaks. And that is super easy to do. I'm going to just use that with a color amp plugged into the emission, okay, and some other bits. But yeah, so the color goes into the emission, okay, and then this map range node, I want that. Actually, I'll show you why I do this way. If I just want my texture to drive the emission, yeah, okay, and then I adjust the colors until it's just sitting on those edges. Yeah, that's just on the edges of where like the Voronoi texture is having an effect. Let's change it. I think the Predator tech is usually kind of like orangey red. So I'm going to make it like an orangey red color and set that emission. In Eevee, I set the emission quite high to maybe like 8. And so now that looks quite cool. But when we use our shader control to adjust it, the emission doesn't follow. Yeah. So that's why we want the map range node to be plugged in to that color amp, which does mean I need to adjust my color amp settings here, something like that. And you could put this on constant if you wanted to, or whatever suits you, but I just want like a tiny little glowing edge around it like that. So as we bring the shader control down, we get it almost looks like it's burning away, but that looks quite cool. Imagine he's invisible and then we start to scale it up and he decloaks. I think that looks pretty cool. Yeah. So that's the first step done. We've got him visible, and then if I just press S and 0, set the scale to 0, we've got him invisible. Yeah, so if you want your guy to be completely invisible, there you go. That's how you do that. But in the Predator movies, there is like a bit of refraction. He's not completely invisible. So I don't want to use a transparent BSDF for this. I'm going to use a glass BSDF. So let's just get rid of that. Add in a glass BSDF, and you're going to see some problems now, but it's very easy to fix. Pop that in there. So now as we bring down our shader, you see there's a bit of a problem. He starts to become transparent immediately, and then the emission is refracted all over the place, and it just doesn't look very good. Not a problem. What we want to do now is this is one change we have to make. Between the map range and our mix shader, we just need to add a color ramp. Okay, pop that in there. Set it to constant. And now we just have to adjust this until we find that sweet spot back there, which is about where I had it before. Maybe something like that. So now that negates, because the glass BSDF by default is white, so that negates any blending between the two. So if I just do that again, bring my shader down, and we've got that effect going on. Yeah, all right. But I don't want that much refraction. If you don't know about the glass BSDF, here's just a quick, very quick guide. Roughness will basically make it look like frosted glass. Yeah, so we don't want that. IOR is index of refraction. 1 is like basically no refraction. Yeah, everything is exactly where it is. This is a little bit blurry because it's EV. But so what we want to do is just offset it slightly. So offset it above or below. So you can put it on like 0.999. You get a little bit of refraction. 0.995. Yeah, get a bit more refraction. So maybe something like that is what we're going for. You can also do it above. So I could do it 1.005, and it does the kind of, it refracts in the opposite direction. Concave, convex, blah, blah, blah. But you just want it ever so slightly off. So maybe 1.001. I like 1.005. I think that looks pretty cool. And the good thing about using the glass BSDF instead of the transparent BSDF is we can also use the bump from here, or we could make a separate bump, whatever you want to do. So just for an example, I'm going to Control Shift and D on this bump so it's still connected, and pop that into the normal here. The reason I've duplicated it is because I want to make this one maybe stronger or weaker, but I don't want it to affect the original bump when he's visible. So I could just bring that right up and the bump goes crazy. Yeah, I'll set it on like 0.1 and you get just a little bit of bump there. Another thing we could do is instead use this texture here as the bump. If you wanted a different effect, so maybe it's like the whatever it is that's cloaking him has its own bump. But just for an example of something else you could do is you could get like this procedural hexagon shader. I'm not going to do that now because I'll show you what that looks like. There's that, and then there's that, and that's a whole load of math. I'm not going to go into that now. But that's the hexagon, procedural hexagons. And so that looks quite cool as bump as well. But anyway, so like I said, feel free to mess around with whatever bump you want to do. I'm going to get rid of the bump just to make things look a little bit neater. Okay. Tidy this up a bit. Yeah, so we've got our, this is our mask. Yeah, there's our mask up here. This is our original base material. This is our bump node, and this is our emission. Okay. The reason I'm just recapping that is because now we're going to make it work for cycles. So if I just switch over to cycles now, you see backface culling doesn't work in cycles. Well, sorry, backface culling is different in cycles. All we have to do now is add in 3 nodes. That's it. Very easy. Not even, don't even have to do anything complicated. So after this mix shader and before the material output, I'm going to add in another mix shader. I'm going to add in a transparent BSDF. This one must be transparent because we want to make the back faces transparent. Plug that in here. Okay, and now I'm going to add in a geometry node. Okay, and then we get the back facing output. Plug that into the factor. Okay, that's it. Done. So that's how you make the back face culling work in cycles. Everything else is the same. This whole setup is the same. But just to keep things easy and quick, I'm going to keep it in EV for now. So I don't need that. So that's just going to slow things down. So I'm just going to delete this stuff because I want to keep things fast. Right, so I've got my shader happening. Yeah, maybe I want to mess with the emission, but whatever. Now I need to copy and paste all of that setup and the driver to every other part of this model and every other material. As you can see, just on the body alone, there are like 8 materials, and we've also got all the body parts up here. So I'll show you how to do that once, and then I'm going to go through and do it very quickly so we can hopefully address some issues that might arise. So I need to, let me just show you one thing. Yeah, all of these materials have this group setup that the author made. So I need to add a principal BSDF to all of those. But if you don't need to do that, all you need to copy is your emission and this mask and your mix, yeah, and the glass BSDF. Okay, you also need to copy the driver here. which is easy to do because if I right click on this and copy driver, that's saved to the driver clipboard. And then if I just box select all of these parts that I want, any nodes that I want to copy, and now hold Control and C, that's on a separate clipboard. So now if I go to my armor, and I just do this one, yeah, everything comes up as expected. And then I just go to my map range and to minimum, right click, paste driver. Okay, and then I'm just going to quickly plug those in very roughly. Might look a bit ugly, but whatever. This is, I think this is his neck armor. Oh, I forgot my bump node. Oh well. Because I want to keep the bump basically the same. It says armor, but I don't know what that is. Right, for some reason that's a separate shader. Okay, I'll put it on his body quickly. Copied and pasted everything into the body material, and I've pasted the driver in here. And if you're doing the glass method, the sort of slightly refracted method, then you don't need to worry about this. But if you were doing it the way where he's just completely invisible, you would need to enable, you need to switch the blend mode to alpha clip and enable backface culling for all of these every time you copy and paste the material. Okay, so as you can see there, that is working. Yeah, the back faces are working, and yeah, you know, I haven't got the bump in there, but you feel free to go and get the bump, and that's it basically. I'm not gonna make you sit there while I go and copy and paste them into every other material, but I'm going to do that, and so you can see the final product. So I've painstakingly gone through and copied and pasted the material setup here to all of the materials, and not forgetting to paste the driver in there. And if you're doing this in Eevee and you want the completely transparent look, not with the refraction, you know, with the transparent BSDF, don't forget to set all of these to alpha clip and backface culling. But I'm using glass, so it's okay. But now I want to fix a little problem, is that so when my effect starts to happen, the scale is different on all of these parts. So the mask here is quite big, and on the dreadlocks it's quite small. And so that's something else. If you like the way it looks there, that's cool. But if you want to go in and fix that, then you would have to click on each material and just go into the mapping node here of the mask and adjust that to suit. Yeah, so I want that to be quite a bit bigger, something like that. The dreads, yeah, let's change the dreads to be like, I don't know, 0.1, maybe 0.2. Yeah, and so just go around and adjust all of those until they are all about the same. What's this thing? Trophy. Okay. Yeah, until, if you want them to be the same. What's this thing? Loincloth? This one. Just go and adjust all of those mapping nodes until the scale suits. Let's find out what, you know, if you don't know this, to find out what one that is, you can just click on face select and find out what it is. It should show you over here, which should be that one. Yes, it's that one. So just scale that one as well. So I'm not going to do all of those now, but that's just to show you how you would correct that. But I am hoping that there's going to be another problem present itself. So if I set my my shader control back to 1 and scale it in, the whole thing starts to disappear, and that looks pretty cool. Yeah. But you want to be able to keyframe it at the scale of 1 and then keyframe it at a scale of 0. So you just press S and then 0. Good, right, this happened. So 0 is not quite enough to make all of it completely disappear. So on his body there are still some patches remaining. This is how we fix that part. What is that? That's not his body, is it? Alright, this is his body. So to make sure it completely disappears, all we do is we go to that map range node and we just increase the from min until it disappears completely. So, we need to make sure we're on the right material first. That's probably his body, and just increase that from min until that's disappeared. And then get this one. And again, we might need to find out exactly what material that is there. That's his armor, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, just find that one and increase that from min until it disappears, like that. Before you go, I'm just going to show you some other ideas which you may find useful and you can mess around with. So I'm going to save that. That's all done. That's a really cool effect, I think. I'm just going to open up a new Blender file. I'm just going to use Suzanne for this because it's just to show you a different way of doing the invisibility, which could also be like teleporting in and out, like Star Trek, whatever, beam me up kind of thing. So I'm going to add in a Suzanne. Let's just make her look a little bit nicer with a nice subdivision. And so Suzanne's there, and I'm going to add in an empty. So I'm going to do this again with an empty, and I'm going to call it shader control. All right, pop into my, well, create a shading tab down here. Just FYI, the reason I'm doing this, if I change the shading tab over here, the screencast keys disappears. So it's just easier to do it this way. All right, and I'm going to give Suzanne a new material, and just to make it easy, I'm going to use a diffuse material. Diffuse mixed with transparent, okay, and a mix shader because we're mixing, and just plug those in like that. Okay, and this time we're going to use a gradient texture to control it, which is going to be like that. Doing this on Eevee as well, so I need to make sure that I've got my alpha clip set. Okay, and so gradient texture, let's use backface culling too, with a color amp plugged into here, plugged into there, and I want the texture coordinate and mapping node, and we use an object, and that is going to be the shader control, my empty that I created. Okay, so you can see here what's going on. Yeah, we've got this, and if I move this over, we're becoming visible and invisible. But I want it to go, you know, maybe you want it like this, that's fine, but I want it to start from the bottom and work its way up. So I'm going to rotate the gradient texture on the y-axis by 90 degrees. Okay, so, well, actually, let's do it minus 90. Do it the other way around. Okay, and what I want to do first is find where it kicks in. I just want to make that align with my empty, just because it's easier to do. And so I'm going to use the X for that because I rotated it. Yeah, so I'm just going to bring that up until it matches with the empty. So now I've got this control making her visible and invisible. And so we've got the color amp. If you want the gradient to be there, you want to set it to alpha blend. Yeah. If you want it to be sharper, set it to alpha clip. But so just for now, I'm going to show you some ideas, yeah, on how we can make this look quite interesting. So I'm going to use alpha clip, but feel free to do whatever you want. So I'm going to grab my texture coordinate and mapping node and bring them back a little bit. And now here I'm just going to show you some possible ideas you might want to mess around with for creating some interesting effects. So one which I think is quite nice is Voronoi, just a normal Voronoi, not distance to edge, and add in a mix node. So what I'm doing here is I'm affecting the vector of the gradient, and I'm just going to plug that in there. Okay, let's scale that right up. Yeah, and then in between here, I'm going to add a color ramp. Well, actually, first let's just take a look at this. Yeah, so this is one effect which you might want to mess with. It looks quite cool, maybe. Yeah. But I want to use my color amp here, and I'm going to switch them. Yeah, so I've got this kind of bubble effect going on. Yeah, and you can affect where that kicks in. And so yeah, if you used alpha blend on here, you would get that. Well, I think alpha clip looks a bit better. Yeah, and so as we bring that up, the bubbles kind of come up and she appears. But what we can also do with this is take this gradient texture and plug it into the bump of the diffuse. Plug it into the normal of the diffuse, sorry. Actually, what I might do is I'm going to duplicate this color amp. Let's make this look a little bit neater. Okay, and I'm going to set this one to B-spline, so it's a little bit smoother. Plug that in there. And just bring the strength down a little bit until I get some nice sort of round bubbles. And let's give the diffuse, I don't know, just like a blue color, something like that. And this looks quite nice because, so if I bring this right down, you know, she's invisible, and then she starts to appear, and the bubbles kind of form together, and I think that's quite a cool effect. Let me know what you think. So Alt and G to set my shader back to its default position. Yeah, I'm just going to plug it in there. All right, so that's one idea. I'm going to disconnect this for now, and I'm going to change, just to show you another one, get rid of Voronoi, and brick texture actually looks quite good. It makes me think of Wakanda, and I'm going to keep this on generated. Plug that in there. Okay, and I'll bring the scale right up. Okay, and again, I could use this bump. Right, and so if I bring that down, she's disappeared, and it's kind of like, I don't know, whatever you think of that. And again, you get the kind of, the bump starts to become smoother and then sit together. I think that's quite an interesting effect. I think it's like, I don't know, makes me think of Black Panther for some reason. And you can also mess with the brick width, so you could have different shapes on there. So that's another idea, brick texture to affect the gradient. Another one which looks quite interesting is magic texture, plugged in here. Yeah, again, bring that scale up. Yeah, and we could also add a color ramp in there just to switch around that effect. Yeah, and it's a little bit similar to the Voronoi one, but yeah, you get another funky effect going on there. So I'm going to plug in, I'm going to do a Voronoi again, but this one I'm going to keep it as its original setting, original shape. Bring the scale up though, and I think, personally, I think this looks kind of like, I don't know, like tissue forming and growing up. And what I could do is switch that bump. Yeah, and we could also add in the texture coordinate mapping node here and make that a little bit more stretched on the y-axis. And if we stretch this up a little bit on the z-axis, something about there. So now if I bring that down again, I think that looks kind of maybe a bit horror kind of thing. Like you could do it in reverse and have blood forming down over something, or like slime. But yeah, and then that goes up and becomes like that. So there you go, just a few ideas for you. If you have any other interesting ideas, please drop them down in the comments, share with the community. And if you found any of that video useful, please drop a like. Thanks very much.